I often caught myself thinking that sometimes happiness looks too perfect to be real, like a fairy tale you're afraid to believe in, because deep down you expect someone to knock on the door any second and say, "Sorry, this was a mistake, you imagined too much." But with him beside me, I didn't think about fate's possible betrayals. I truly believed he was the one, my future husband, the father of my children, my destiny. His smile dissolved every fear. When he held my hand, the whole world became warmer. Even rainy mornings felt cozy. We made plans, laughed at silly things, argued about trifles, and always made peace because we knew a wedding awaited us, a life together awaited us. He knew how to listen, how to look at me as if nothing else in the world existed. And I allowed myself to believe that this time nothing and no one could ruin my peace. The day I found out about the pregnancy, my hands trembled. Two bright lines on the test seemed like two new roads merging into one, ours. I cried and laughed at the same time. My tears were sweet, warm, like spring rain. I hugged myself as if I already felt a tiny heartbeat inside me, a little soul that would make us a family. I thought long about how to tell him. I imagined his reaction. He would lift me in his arms, spin me around, his eyes lighting up with happiness. We would embrace for a long time, and he would whisper, "I've always dreamed of this." He often said he wanted children, that our home would be filled with laughter, that even when my hair turned grey, he would still love me the same. That evening, I cooked dinner. I wanted everything to be perfect. His favourite salad, candles, even a bottle of non-alcoholic wine, because now I had to take care of myself and our baby. My heart pounded, and I kept touching my belly, still flat but already so dear to me. When he came into the apartment, I rushed to meet him. He hugged me, kissed my hair, and everything felt so familiar, so right, that I believed even more. This was our moment. "You look different tonight," he laughed, sitting down at the table. "Your eyes are glowing like a cat that's stolen the cream. What happened?" I took a deep breath. It was now or never. "I have news," I said, my voice trembling. "I'm pregnant." I waited for an explosion of joy. I expected him to jump up, his face shining with light, but instead he froze for a second. His smile vanished, his eyes turned unreadable. Then he smiled again, but it was mechanical. "Seriously?" he said. "Wow, unexpected." I nodded, trying not to notice the chill running down my spine. I told myself he was just in shock, that he needed time. After all, men react differently to these things. "But it's good, right?" I asked softly, searching his eyes. He raised his glass, smiling uncertainly. "Well, I guess so. Our wedding's soon. Everything lines up." I sighed with relief, convincing myself my imagination was exaggerating. "We talked about little things," he joked, but deep inside a shadow stayed with me. His reaction wasn't what I had dreamed of, yet I told myself maybe I had just romanticized it too much. That night I fell asleep in his arms, certain that ahead of us lay only happiness. I had no idea that at that very moment he was already beginning to destroy our world, mine and our unborn child's. The next few days passed quietly. He behaved as usual, sometimes even overly affectionate, as if trying to erase that strange hesitation in his eyes when I first told him about the baby. I convinced myself that everything was fine, that I had just misread his reaction. But a woman's heart always feels the truth, even when she doesn't want to admit it. One evening, when he was taking a shower, his phone lit up on the table. I had never checked his messages before. We trusted each other, or at least I thought we did. But this time something pushed me. My hand reached out on its own. A message popped up. "So she really is pregnant. You're such an idiot." It was from her, his ex. My stomach twisted. I opened the conversation. There were several recent messages, my name mentioned, the word baby thrown around carelessly, laughter between the lines. He had told her. He had shared my most intimate joy with the one person who should have stayed in the past. "Don't worry, she's so naive she thinks I'm happy. Let her dream for now." That was his reply. The letters blurred before my eyes. I felt sick, as if the floor had disappeared under me. My hands shook, but I couldn't stop reading. "So you're really going to marry her?" she wrote. "Of course. Why not? She'll make a good wife. She's quiet, obedient, and a kid on the way is convenient." It felt like every word carved into my skin like a knife. That wasn't love. That wasn't the man who had looked at me with tenderness, who whispered about forever. It was a stranger wearing his face, mocking me behind my back. I put the phone down just before he came out of the bathroom. He kissed me lightly, as if nothing had happened, and I forced myself to smile. I looked into his eyes and realized I would never see him the same way again. That night I lay awake, pretending to sleep. My hand rested on my belly, as if shielding the baby from his words, from his betrayal. It was the first time I truly understood the future we were planning might not exist. From that day on, nothing was the same. Even when he smiled, I could see the shadow behind it. His words sounded right, but his eyes betrayed something else. A cold amusement, as if he knew a secret I wasn't supposed to. And then she appeared. Not just in messages, but in my life. The first time I noticed her was on the street. I was walking back from the store carrying a bag of groceries when I heard laughter behind me. That laughter, sharp, mocking, unforgettable. "Congratulations," she said, stepping closer. Her eyes slid down to my belly, still flat, but to her it was already a target. "So it's true. You're going to be mommy now." I froze. My throat tightened, but I forced myself to stand still. She leaned in, lowering her voice just enough for me to hear. "Don't be too proud. He still calls me, you know. Sometimes men marry one woman, but their hearts—" She smirked. "Their hearts belong elsewhere." Her words hit like a slap. I wanted to shout, to push her away, but instead I just clenched the grocery bag until the plastic cut into my fingers. And then, like fate's cruel joke, he appeared. He walked up, smiling as if this were some casual encounter. He kissed me on the cheek, slipped his arm around my shoulders, and laughed. "What's this? A friendly chat?" he asked lightly, as if nothing was wrong. I looked at him, really looked, and I saw it, the way his eyes flicked to hers, the spark of secret understanding. He was enjoying this. He was playing both sides, pretending to be my loving fiancé while letting her mock me. I forced a smile, though inside something was breaking. "Yes," I said quietly, "just a chat." We walked away together, his hand warm on my shoulder, but inside I felt only cold. Every step echoed with betrayal. He didn't know I had read the messages. He didn't know that I already knew who he really was, and yet he still laughed in my face. Our home no longer felt like a home. The walls seemed to echo with silence, heavy and suffocating. He came and went as he pleased, always cheerful on the surface, always quick with a joke. But beneath his smile, I could feel his detachment. Nights grew colder. He stopped asking how I was feeling, stopped touching my belly, stopped mentioning the future we had once dreamed of. I tried to tell myself it was stress, nerves, fear of becoming a father. But in my heart, I knew better. One evening, he didn't come home. No call, no message. I sat by the window until dawn, watching the streetlights fade into grey morning. My phone remained silent, and every second of that silence felt like a blade twisting deeper. When he finally walked through the door, he looked different. His shirt carried a faint scent of perfume that wasn't mine. His hair was tousled, his smile careless. "Where were you?" I asked, my voice trembling despite my effort to stay calm. "With friends," he said quickly, not meeting my eyes. "With friends," I repeated. The words tasted bitter. He dropped onto the couch, scrolling through his phone as if I weren't even there. That was the moment I felt something inside me snap. I realized I was no longer part of his world. The next day, I saw them together. At first, I thought my eyes deceived me, but no. They were walking down the street, laughing, her hand brushing against his arm. He didn't even try to hide it. When he noticed me across the road, he didn't look guilty. He just smirked, as if daring me to confront him, as if my pain was nothing more than entertainment. That night he came home late again. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but I stayed silent. What was the point? I already knew the truth. He had chosen her. And in that silence, with his laughter still echoing in my memory, I understood. The man I loved was gone. In his place was a stranger, cruel and careless. A stranger who would soon leave me completely. The day he left, there were no tears on his face, no hesitation in his voice. He simply gathered his things, stuffing them into a bag without even looking at me. "I can't do this anymore," he said flatly. "It's not working between us." "Not working," I whispered. My hand instinctively covered my belly, as if shielding the child from his words. "We were planning a wedding. We're going to have a baby." He shrugged. "People change their minds. I changed mine." Just like that. As if our years together, our promises, our love meant nothing. I didn't beg. Something inside me was too shattered for pleading. I just watched him walk out, closing the door behind him with a finality that crushed the air in my lungs. News spread quickly in our small town. It didn't take long before I heard he was back with her, his ex, the one who had mocked me in the street. They flaunted their happiness, strolling hand in hand, posting pictures, laughing as if the world belonged to them. And then, like salt on an open wound, came the whispers. She was pregnant. I heard it from neighbors, from acquaintances, from strangers who looked at me with pity. He had left me, pregnant and broken, only to celebrate the same news with her. Nights became endless. I lay awake, listening to the silence of the apartment, wondering how I would raise this child alone. My dreams of family, of love, of a safe home had crumbled into ashes. But in that darkness, something new began to stir. A quiet strength, a determination I didn't know I had. I realized I had no one left to rely on but myself and the tiny life growing inside me. So I chose to live. Not for him, not for the past, but for my child. Still, deep inside, I knew. Stories like this never end quietly, and his chapter in my life wasn't finished yet. Time passed, and though my heart still carried scars, I slowly learned to breathe again. My belly grew rounder, my steps slower, but with every flutter inside me, I felt less broken. I was not alone. Meanwhile, their story unfolded like a cruel parody of mine. They announced their engagement with flashing rings and stage smiles. People congratulated them as if they were the perfect couple. I tried not to care, but sometimes the bitterness was stronger than me. And then came the twist of fate. Just weeks before their wedding, he discovered the truth. The child she carried wasn't his. The news spread quickly, carried on whispers that reached me like a cold wind. I imagined his face, the disbelief, the fury. The man who had mocked me for being naive, who had laughed at my trust, was now the fool himself. He had traded real love for a lie. He had abandoned me and our child for an illusion, and now that illusion shattered in his hands. I saw him once after the news broke. He stood alone outside a cafe, shoulders hunched, a cigarette trembling in his fingers. His eyes were hollow, his face pale. He looked smaller, weaker, stripped of the arrogance he once wore so proudly. For a moment I almost pitied him, almost. But then I remembered the laughter, the betrayal, the way he had left me without a second thought. And all pity disappeared. Justice had found him, not by my hand, but by life itself. And in that moment, for the first time in months, I smiled. The day my son was born, the world shifted. His first cry cut through the silence like a promise that no matter what had been taken from me, life had given me something far greater. I held him against my chest, tiny and fragile, and whispered, "You are my beginning, not my end." Those sleepless nights and exhausting days were hard, but they were filled with meaning. Every little movement, every soft breath reminded me why I had endured, why I had chosen strength instead of despair. He tried to come back once. Months after his fiancée's betrayal, he showed up at my door. His eyes were full of regret, his smile forced. "I made mistakes," he said, voice shaking, "but we can fix this. We still have a chance." I looked at him, at the man who had laughed at me, humiliated me, left me when I needed him most. And then I looked at my son, sleeping peacefully in his crib. "There is no we anymore," I said calmly. "You made your choice. Now live with it." He stood there, silent, perhaps expecting tears, perhaps hoping for forgiveness. But I had none left to give him. When he finally turned and walked away, I felt no pain, only freedom. Life went on. My child grew, and so did I, stronger, wiser, no longer naive. I learned that sometimes losing someone is not a tragedy, it's a gift. And as for him, He remained trapped in the ruins of his own choices, haunted by the love he had thrown away. I never needed revenge. Fate had already written the ending for us, and it was fair. Because the greatest justice is not watching another person suffer. It is standing tall, unbroken, while they realize they can never have back what they lost.